that there is a high need for resident support despite utility assistance and ERAP receiving less and less funding. Less than ideal housing impacts youth mental health due to increased stress due to distributions of, my bad. Increased stress due to disruptions of routine, more family stress causing family conflict, and more feelings of overwhelm, anxiety, and depression.
Thank you, Sanai. And now we'll have Carly come up and tell us a little bit more about our housing campaign. I don't know where she is. Okay. Or I will tell you about our housing campaign. So, when it comes to our housing campaign, it's called Where Dreams Come Home. And it's important to really think about what Sanai just said. So thinking about the district, over 90% of public housing residents are Black, and only 18% of housing vouchers from 2022 to 2023 were used. 4 out of 5 public housing units are in need of repair, and not having a stable place to live makes it more likely for youth to be bullied, feel sad, or be hopeless. When it comes to our campaign, Where Dreams Come Home, our youth are demanding that there's increased access to affordable quality housing and the assurance that units are available for larger families, expanded funding and access to utility assistance, a requirement of the city for new affordable housing developments to use quality materials, as well as ensure timely and quality repairs for public housing and low-income housing.
Thank you, Ms. Irene and Sanai. Our next category is safety. Let's welcome Naomi, Stephen, and Neve.
Hi, y'all. My name is Naomi, and I am a youth leader at Black Swan Academy and DC Girls Coalition. Violence has been a category on many of our Black youth agendas, and we continue to see the harmful outcomes of over-policing and violence throughout our city. Our youth well-being survey found that many youth in DC feel unsafe getting to and from school. 1 in 5 students say that safe passage is a problem. Unsafe conditions and violence experienced and witnessed make it harder for students to focus in school, connect with others, and feel comfortable. Increased police presence can make students feel anxious, and when the youth don't feel safe, they may skip school, isolate themselves, struggle academically, or face mental health challenges. To address this, youth are calling for more access to trauma therapy and rehabilitation programs, increased funding for community-led training and conflict resolution and coping skills, and strong background checks to reduce access to weapons. Stephen and Neve will now share their stories about community safety.
Good evening, guests. My name is Stephen Cook. I'm a youth leader of Black Swan Academy. I go to H.D. Wilson. I'm in the 9th grade. I live in Ward 7. Thank you for joining us this evening. Today, I'm standing here to advocate for solutions to end violence, more specifically community violence. There have been multiple instances where I've seen or heard something going on around my school, community, and social media. The amount of violence I hear around my community is severe. My personal experience with community violence happened in 7th grade year of middle school when I heard about how I heard about from a friend how my peers jumped a girl on the bus. When this was first said to me, I didn't believe it. I didn't believe something like that could happen. The next day at school, those 3 were called down to the office out of class and had a mediation. That day, I realized the community I live in wasn't the best, given all the violence and what people were capable of. Even if you're not there when violence happens, you still feel it. When people you know get hurt, it changes how safe you feel every day. Today I came to ask you all to join us in advocating for more community investment and opportunities for community members to build mediation skills. DC must shift from over-policing to prioritizing the well-being of everyday people to create better communities. Neighborhood safety cannot be achieved if people are being watched and criminalized for just existing in their bodies in public spaces. Community starts with actual support and empowering those that live there, not just surveillance. Thank you for your time.
My name is Neve Williams. I am a high school youth leader with Black Swan Academy. I attend Anacostia High School. Today I'm here to talk about youth curfew. The youth curfew in Washington, D.C. is widely criticized because it unfairly targets and harms black and brown young people while failing to make the city safer. Instead of addressing the real causes of violence like poverty, lack of safe spaces, and underinvestments in youth programs, the curfew criminalizes normal behavior such as being outside in a specific area with friends or being outside after a after-school program. Instead of restricting access, you could ask the youth what could we do to make the city feel safer, or what after school or late night programs would we like. In Black Swan, our goal is to create a youth advisory board that amplifies youth voices with the hopes that the council will not make decisions without input from impacted communities. The youth curfew is connected to youth well-being because these laws unfairly targets black and brown youth, treating them like criminals for just existing in their neighborhood. A few friends of mine were out the day after curfew. They were unaware of the curfew and decided to go to McDonald's on U Street since it was the only thing open late at night. As soon as they walked out, the police detained them and threw one of the girls on the wall. They were confused and scared. They were asking themselves, why us? Is it because of our skin color? But no, for a curfew that was made the same day they were outside, confused and scared, they were put inside a police car and instantly questioned. The police then sat them in a holding facility till 3 o'clock in the morning with no explanation or nothing during a school night. None of them was harmed, but it's about the principle because instead of announcing it or giving them warning, they detained them without any warning or remorse. I am asking to give youth recreation centers or late night alternatives safe spaces. Thank you for listening to my testimony today.
Thank you. Stephen and Nevaeh's story highlight the importance of youth safety being centered in care, not curfews. Our next topic is Youth Voices for Resources. The Youth Resources category centers the need for DC to prioritize youth under the age of 18, gaining access to essential resources that create stability and provide us with social support. Our survey reports that 86% of youth want more opportunities to earn money, 74.3% support year-round jobs and training, and 77.1% want schools to provide basic needs. Structural racism continues to create barriers for Black youth. As the future of the district, myself and my fellow peers deserve opportunities to earn a living wage, gain job training in our areas of interest, have access to mental health supports, and live free from discrimination. Now, Malik and Brain will discuss more about access to resources.
Here are some facts about youth resource in DC. DC youth unemployment rate is higher than the national average for every 5 Black youth without a job. There's only 1 white young person without a job. 71% of Black DC youth ages 18 to 24 reportedly experience unemployment. Living and property affects youth mental health due to lack of resources, stress, and trauma. Our demands are provide access to year-round employment, job training, and paid internship programs. Independent benefits for youth ages 18 and 24-hour access to spaces in the community, including recreation centers and youth shelters. Rain will now share his personal story about access to resources as it relates to healthcare.
Dear community members, my name is Rain Terrain. I'm a high school youth leader with Black Swan Academy. I attend H.D. Woodson High School. I'm in the 9th grade and I live in Ward 8. Thank you for your time. Today I'm here to talk about youth mental health care. This issue is important to me because many young people are not getting the outpatient care they need because of a lack of funding and limited resources. There are very few outpatient providers available for youth in DC, especially for certain services like substance use treatment. That means a lot of youth youth don't get the follow-up care they need after experiencing a mental health crisis. From my experience, that gap in support is real. After I was hospitalized, I didn't have the support I needed. Once I was discharged, I was left to deal with everything on my own without consistent help or guidance. Without that support, things didn't improve the way they could have. It showed me how important it is for young people to have someone there for them after a crisis, not just during it. I truly believe that if I had access to strong outpatient support after being discharged, my experience would have been different. That's why I'm asking you to invest more funding into youth in DC. Without it, young people face higher risk of falling back into crisis, struggling in school, and not getting the chance to fully recover. We need consistent accessible support, not just in emergencies, but after them too. My name is Rain. Thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you, Malik and Rain, for presenting Youth Voices for Resources. Youth are facing real challenges and are clearly calling for stable housing, safer communities, and greater access to opportunity and support. As youth leaders and youth organizers, we are putting our demands in action through campaigns focused on building up youth resources. As you saw from the campaign fair, our middle school members are working on school-based efforts to impact the spaces they spend most of their days in. And high school members are broadening their effects so that youth all over the district can have a meaningful say in laws that govern them.
And now we're going to have Sanai and Rain tell us a little bit more about our high school campaign.
Before we jump in, I want to start with a quick question. Who do you think should have a say in the decisions that affect young people's lives in DC? You. Most people will probably say young people themselves should have a voice in those decisions, but the reality is that most policies about youth in DC are still made without young people at the table. That's why we launched the Youth Voices for Resources campaign, which is advocating for the creation of a youth governing council in DC.
To understand why this campaign matters, we have to start with a little history. Washington, D.C. has a long history of disenfranchising Black residents and limiting local political power. Even today, D.C. residents pay federal taxes but do not have full voting representation in Congress, and Congress still has the authority to interfere with D.C.'s laws and budget. Because of this, movements like Free D.C. movement have pushed for full political power and self-determination for D.C. residents. Historically, many of the policies that shaped D.C. were made without the full participation of the communities most impacted by them, especially Black communities. And young people, especially Black and brown youth, experience an additional layer of that exclusion.
Black Swan Academy is a nonprofit organization committed to amplifying Black youth voices. This year, our campaign is focused on passing legislation to establish a youth advisory council in D.C. For too long, traditional avenues like the testimony and public commitment have not been enough. Even when young people show up and speak out, harmful policies like the temporary youth curfew have still been passed despite clear youth opposition. This tells us something important. Youth voices being heard but not meaningfully considered. We need a stronger, more concrete way for youth to influence the decisions that directly impact their lives. Our proposed legislation aims to change that. While details are still being finalized, the bill would establish a youth advisory council made up of young people ages 11 to 20 who meet bi-weekly to discuss issues affecting youth. This council will not just advise, it will hold real influence, including casting advisory votes on legislation related to youth. More broadly, this effort is about expanding what counts as youth affairs and ensuring that young people have a direct role in shaping policy. The Youth DC Council will regularly review legislation introduced at the DC Council and determine which issues to engage with and even develop and advocate for original legislation. Please see the QR code to continue reading and sign to our letter. We will be presenting this letter to council members during the upcoming town hall and throughout budget season as we work to find a sponsor for our legislation.
Today, there are many spaces where young people are invited to share their opinions. There are youth advisory groups, listening sessions, and youth panels. But many of these spaces are performative, meaning that they allow young people to speak, but not necessarily to influence decisions. Young people are often asked for input, but they do not have real authority, voting power, or decision-making influence. At the same time, when policymakers talk about youth issues in DC, the conversation often focuses on control, punishment, rather than resources. For example, instead of investing in opportunities, we often see proposals for permanent youth curfews, increased policing, and policies that frame young people as problems instead of leaders. The result is that young people are often talked about rather than spoken with. Where'd he go? Not read? But young people across DC have been very clear about what they actually want. They've been demanding things like year-round employment opportunities, trauma-informed responses to violence and prevention, 24-hour access to and increased availability for spaces for youth in the city, long-term accessible mental health supports, and real leadership opportunities. Programs like the DC Summer Youth Employment Program show how powerful youth employment programs can be. But young people are saying they want more than temporary opportunities. They want a real voice in the decisions that shape their lives. And DC isn't the only place where people are thinking about youth power. Cities around us are experimenting with ways to expand youth participation in government. For example, under Mayor Scott's leadership, Baltimore has seen a drastic decrease in violence crimes as a result of increased investment in OST programs and the leadership opportunities. In Tacoma Park, the city lowered the voting age in local elections to allow 16 and 17-year-olds to vote, in addition to supporting a youth council that advises and works closely with their city council. These examples show that cities are beginning to recognize that young people should have a greater role in shaping policy. So the question becomes, what would it look like if DC took youth leadership seriously? Why the hell he not reading? Why the hell he not reading? Just keep reading, please. Our proposal. That's where the Youth Voices for Resources campaign comes in. We are advocating for legislation that would revive and transform the DC Youth Advisory Council into the Youth Governing Council. The goal is to move from symbolic participation to meaningful leadership. Key changes. The legislation would introduce several important changes. Youth would have an advisory vote on issues they identify as youth issues. This means their perspectives would be formally recognized in the decision-making process. The council would be renamed the Youth Governing Council, reflecting the intention to move beyond a purely advisory role as the initiative proves successful. Youth would have the ability to propose legislation that they believe would positively impact their communities. Participation would be a paid opportunity, providing young people with immediate financial resources, real work experience, and long-term professional development. The legislation would expand the definition of youth affairs to include issues like employment, safety, housing, transportation, education, and health. Because young people experience every part of the city, not just youth programs. You're supposed to be at the other side. So the Youth Governing Council isn't about creating another program. It's about building a future where young people are recognized as leaders and decision makers in the city they live in. A future where youth are helping shape policies around employment, safety, education, and opportunity. One of the ways we're building support for this campaign is through a community sign-on letter that calls on city leaders to support the creation of the Youth Governing Council. The letter outlines why youth leadership matters and why this legislation is important for the future of DC. I'm going to invite Rain up to read a short portion of the letter so everyone can hear what we're asking for. Please use a compatible device to scan the QR code to follow along as Rain reads.
Black Swan Academy is a nonprofit organization committed to amplifying Black youth voices. This year, our campaign is focused on passing legislation to establish a youth advisory council in DC. For too long, traditional avenues like testimony and public comment have not been enough. Even when young people show up and speak out, harmful policies like the temporary youth curfew have still been passed despite clear youth opposition. That tells us something important. Youth voices being heard but not meaningfully considered. We need a stronger, more concrete way for young people to influence the decisions that directly impact their lives. Our proposed legislation aims to change that. While details are still being finalized, the bill would establish a youth advisory council made up of young people ages 11 to 20 who meet bi-weekly to discuss issues affecting youth. This council would not just advise it will hold real influence, including casting advisory votes on legislation related to youth. More broadly, this effort is about expanding what counts as youth affairs and ensuring that young people have a direct role in shaping policy. The Youth Advisory Council will regularly review legislation introduced at the DC Council, determine which issues to engage with, and even develop and advocate for original legislation. Please see the QR code to continue reading our sign-on letter. We will be presenting this letter to council members during our upcoming town hall and throughout the budget season as we work to find a sponsor for our legislation. Thank you.
Thank you, Rain and Sanaa. Now we will hear from my fellow youth leaders by transitioning to our panel. Let's welcome back Ms. Nike, our moderator.
All right, good evening, everyone. I don't know about you all, but I'm pretty inspired by the young people who spoke today. If you want to sign on, my understanding is that the lighting is making it hard for the QR code to pick up. So in the front, we have these reports, and the top QR code in the back will let you sign on to the sign-on letter. So please feel free to do that on your way out or during our break. Before we move to the panel, I just want to ground us a little bit in this moment because for those of you who may have heard and for those of you who may not, the mayor's office released their proposed budget for FY27 recently. And you just heard all of these young people talk about the policies and the practices and the resources that they want available to them here in our community. Resources and policies and practices that would make them feel safe, feel welcome, feel like meaningful members of this community. And I'm sure you've all heard this saying, put your money where your mouth is, right? And we know that our government's mouth has very much been saying that they care about young people. They care about young people's safety. They care about young people's well-being. But where are they putting their money? Where are they putting our money, our tax dollars? So in the FY27 proposed budget, the Department of Behavioral Health is proposed to have $6.1 million cut from school-based mental health services. Cut. We've heard our young people talk about how their mental health is affected by all of these policies, and yet we already don't have their needs met in schools, and now there's another proposed cut. The Department of Parks and Recreation, site-based programming like the teen events that our young people have really enjoyed going to, there's a proposed $5.5 million cut from the Department of Parks and Recreation. Instead, where are we spending our money? So currently, the Department of Youth Rehabilitation Services that locks up young people is spending about $200,000 a day to detain young people securely behind bars, in cells. $200,000 a day. It amounts to about $73 million a year. how could we better use that money, right? In the 2027 proposed budget, there's a proposed $6.5 million increase for the Department of Youth Rehabilitation Services for secure detention of young people. And for MPD, the Metropolitan Police Department, there's a proposed $90 million increase. That's about 15% of their budget. So that's where the district is proposing putting our money and blaming our young people for whatever decisions they're making, even though our young people have sat up here and have told all of us and have told our lawmakers what they need, what they want, right? What's gonna actually make living in this community fun and meaningful and safe. So that's something I just want us to keep in mind as we hold our elected officials accountable. But today isn't so much about them, it's about our young people and about their ideas and about the vision that they have for the district. So I'd like to invite up Naima, Tyla, Taylor, to come up to the table for us to have a little conversation about some dreaming up of what the district should look like. So sometimes we adults, we get bogged down by the day-to-day. But our young people here are here to dream big and to tell us what they envision, what they imagine for the district. Can you take turns just introducing yourselves one by one so that our audience knows who you are?
My name is Yaa Balkum. I'm currently a senior at E.L. Haynes, and in the fall I will be attending Swan University as a Posse Scholar. And for 3 years I have been a part of Critical Exposure, which is an organization dedicated to creating social change by empowering youth through education, leadership, and opportunities, and above all, through the power of storytelling via photography.
Hi. My name is Taylor Ridout. I am 16 and I attend Anacostia High School, where I'm a part of an early college program that allows me to take college level courses. I'm also a part of Black Swan Academy, where we are currently working on a youth advisory board in DC so that young people feel like they have a decision in the processes that's happening.
My name is Tyler Dawson. I'm a senior at Anacostia High School, and I'm basically an advocate for the youth. Like, I don't want to say that I do everything, but I do everything that I can to make sure that youth voices are heard.
Hi, my name is Naima Kanate. I'm a 10th grader at Jackson Reed High School, and I've been working with DC Girls Coalition for 2 years now, and I've had the opportunity to testify at public hearings, attend rallies and protests to kind of advocate for youth.
All right, y'all, so let's just start with, if you were completely in charge, right? If you were totally in charge, you could build a pro-youth district from scratch. What might that look like? What might it feel like? What might it sound like? Where would we put our money? And anybody can start.
If I were to create a pro-youth district, I would prioritize support and prevention over penalization. As we've heard from all the many testimonies throughout the night, youth feel as though they are not receiving the support and resources they need, but are receiving plenty of punishment for the behaviors that result from that. So I would focus on addressing that behavior to prevent it rather than punishing.
Yeah, before you move on, can you say a little bit about what that could look like? Like, what's one way we could do that?
As we heard before, a lot of the budget for this year is being redirected towards programs that would end up putting more youth in jail and being directed away from resources and groups that would end up supporting youth. So I would transfer that money to go into mental health, to go into schools, to go into programs so that youth have better outlets rather than simply punishing them for their behavior.
Thank you.
A pro-youth district for me would center young people in decision making. I feel like we are considered more of like an afterthought, and we would be the main focus, especially considering that most of these decisions have an impact directly on us.
Thank you. Tyler and Naima, do you want to? Yes.
Something that I would like to say is just I would make sure like the housing crisis, youth don't often have like safe spaces outside of home. So making sure that they have a safe home within like itself, that would be great. Also just having third spaces, making sure they have a good school life, mental health support. Those are all great things that would help youth in DC.
We've heard a lot of people talking a public narrative that paints young people in the district pretty negatively lately. But we know that that's not true, right? That's not the whole truth, that y'all are up to a lot of other things. So what else are you and your peers and your friends up to? What are y'all proud of?
I would like to say that I'm proud of like all the youth that are here today, here advocating for help in DC. And I'm also proud of the work that I've done with DC Girls Coalition. I think we're currently working on a youth bill of rights in conjunction with other organizations. So that's something that I'm very happy I've been able to take part in.
I feel like I'm proud of everyone who advocates for the youth. Like, I just feel like it's very important not only for youth to advocate for themselves, but we also need adults to advocate for us too. Like, we have to have the support from the adults. And I feel like youth are always the problem, so I feel like government officials should fix it. We are always the problem, no matter what it is. So we should fix it, but fix it the right way.
Tyler, can you say a little bit more about what would be more of the right way?
So I feel like the right way will be getting to the root of the problem. For example, a lot of people have the narrative that everything that youth do are negative. Like, for example, oh, we always fight down Navy Yard and we just act crazy, but no one's going to act crazy for no reason. There is a really big limit of mental health resources for youth and also housing resources. If a child doesn't have anywhere to go, then where would they go but be outside?
What do you wish they were offering instead? You said mental health services, housing. Are there any other kind of like events specific for youth that you'd like to see, any of you?
I would say more supports for programs like the ones represented here today, programs like critical exposure, like DC Girls Coalition, like Black Swan Academy, because throughout my participation in these programs, I have been able to see so many youth doing so much important work and putting their energy into so many important causes that I believe that if these organizations were to receive more support to continue this work, we would definitely see a better improvement in youth outcomes.
So one of our prime tenets at Black Swan Academy is purpose. It's pride, purpose, and power. So where do y'all find your purpose? Like, what are y'all fighting for?
We are fighting for change. Like, overall, DC does need a lot of change, and not any change within, like, we don't need any extra enforcement such as the National Guards. We need support. We don't need any actions to be took against us. We just need support, like more mental health counselors, housing support. I feel like when there's an issue, sometimes the government just tries to do things to, you know, put a negative name on it and things like that. But I feel like if they took the positive route, then things could be changed.
I find purpose advocating for youth, and I am fighting for a future where youth feel supported instead of like overlooked.
So a couple of you have mentioned wanting support from adults. I think, Tyler, you mentioned needing adults to actually act on your behalf as well. Are there examples of times when you did feel heard by adults? You did feel like they took action?
What I'd like to say with all of the organizations here, like Black Swan Academy, Critical Exposure, and DC Girls Coalition, those are spaces where youth is actually heard, where the adults come together to listen to us and advocate for us at different things, and also help us advocate for ourselves, like at public hearings. So that's a time that I've felt heard.
I would like to say I fully agree. In these spaces, a lot of the focus is making sure that youth are truly running them. And that means that when you speak, we are not just listened to. What we say is actually acted upon, which is what matters most.
Have any of y'all felt heard outside of these spaces?
I would say the late night teen nights that they were doing, those are really nice because it's what youth has been asking for a very long time, just a space where we feel comfortable and safe among our peers.
Any other examples of feeling heard outside of these spaces? Okay. What are some actions that adults could take in maybe your schools or other environments that would make you feel heard?
I feel like just giving us like the safe space. I feel like sometimes, when it comes to staff, teachers, whoever, especially people who work in schools, sometimes they just do it for a check. And I feel like it's very important to realize that you have to have a passion for working with youth. You can't just do anything for one specific reason. I feel like if the space was open to me, then I would definitely take that opportunity. But when it comes with people, especially who work in schools, sometimes out of schools, there's always attitudes, and there's always going to be someone who feels as though you shouldn't have a right to speak just because of our age. And that's definitely not true. I feel like that's the biggest problem. I feel like youth are people too, and sometimes adults don't realize that. I feel like just opening that space up and introducing the opportunity, then we will take it.
Do you want to do it? Okay. So another one of our central principles is power, right? Building up youth power, supporting youth power. So how are you all using your power, and how do you want adults to use their power to support you?
So I would say the way I use my power is to learn more about the issues in DC and kind of advocate for them, like going to public hearings, rallies, and whatnot, just doing things to help others learn more about it and actually bring light to the situations. And I think that adults can really help take action and make something actually happen to change DC for the better.
I use my power by participating in spaces like this, but I really feel like adults should create more opportunities instead of putting up barriers.
Taylor, can you say a little bit more about the barriers?
I think that there's a lot of negative stigmas put on us by adults, and instead they should be investing in us because we are the future.
Sorry, Tyler, did you want to add something? All right, well, actually, Taylor, that was perfect segue, because people do talk a lot about young people being the leaders of tomorrow, being the future. We think that you all actually are already leaders today. So how are you and other young people helping shape the district today? So if, for example, the Youth Advisory Council or the Youth Governing Council were to actually be introduced and were to come to power, what might y'all want to use that power to do?
I feel like we want to use our power to get youth more power. I feel like the way that we advocate is specifically for the youth, not even just for the youth, for everyone. I feel like when we use our voices and we present our voices, it's positive. And I feel like everyone always says that youth are the future. Well, I feel like when we advocate for ourselves, and also when we get help advocating, it's representing the future in a positive way instead of a negative way.
I wanted to say that one of the ways I've been using my power alongside other youth in critical exposure is to get better understanding of the material needs that many Black and brown youth in DC are lacking, so that we can understand how it impacts their mental health and how we can turn that information to better support them, so that we can create a world where youth aren't lacking these resources, aren't experiencing these mental health issues in the first place.
All right, before we turn it over to Q&A from the audience, just one last question. What do you want to make sure the adults in this room walk away knowing or doing? Could be anything.
I think that listening as you are today is very important, but it's only the first step, and that what matters now and what matters most is to actually act on the things that we have been advocating for throughout the night.
I want them to know that, like, we are the future, but we're also the present. We need investments now. We need trust. We just need support.
Yeah, I want to agree with everything that was said. Just taking action. You know, a lot of people are like performative. They say they're going to do this, and they come to these spaces, but then they don't actually take action to benefit youth in DC. And also, like what was said, that if we want a better future, we have to take action now and make change and do things now so that our future can be better than we even imagined.
I would just like the adults to leave this room knowing that if you know something, do something before, like, you know, anything does get the chance to happen. I feel like with all the logistics and everything that's going on now, you never know what's going to happen. And I feel like if we help the youth, then, you know, things could be prevented.
So thank y'all so much for sharing your ideas. Now we're going to open it up for an open mic in case anybody has any questions, reactions, responses to anything that was said up here by any of the panelists. So just raise your hand and we'll come to you with the mic.
Hi, y'all. So I got two questions. My first question is, what does safety look like to y'all?
I think that over-policing is a really big problem right now because it puts Black and brown youth directly
As a target?
Yeah, and so that would be like my main concern, like over-policing.
Okay.
Just to build off what she said, more police does not equal safe. Like, that's completely untrue.
Yeah, I agree with you guys. And then my second question is, like, you know, y'all have friends who go out and probably, you know, do things that they isn't supposed to do. How do y'all prevent yourselves or try to prevent your peers from doing things that you know is not good?
Well, I think what we really want is to include youth in decisions like this, because there are times where youth are at fault for the things that happen, but I think that because adults are the ones that's putting the consequences on us, there's like a disconnect. And I think that if youth were more involved in the decision-making processes, then we can come up with a solution to these things that does happen.
Yeah, I agree. I think a lot of the times things are happening to youth. Youth isn't being consulted, so people are pushing things on youth, and they often resent those things and do things that, like, obviously aren't really good. But I think that if they were more involved in the decision-making process, then we could come to, like, an area where they're doing things that are normal.
Hi. Ooh, can you hear me? Can you hear me? Yeah? Okay. Hi, y'all. Thanks so much for everything you shared. I'm really curious about the Youth Advisory Council. Where are you in that process? And yeah, like is it launching anytime soon?
So right now we need the support.
So I feel like it's something that we've been working on. I feel like before it is fully presented, we want to make sure that, it's truly exactly what we want and it truly does make sense. We're just trying to make it so that we're not specifically asking for too much. We just want to ask for youth to be able to advocate, and that's really all.
And to build off her point, we are really looking for support right now. We've rallied, we've testified, we've done so many things to get these people on board. And so that's why we've been asking for you guys' support as well.
My name is Addison, and my question is about how do you feel about youth in our grade? What's it called? No. How do you feel about youth trying to vote, not being able to vote, about y'all curfew?
I feel like it's a really big problem because this is something that directly affects youth, and yet we've had no say in the matter at all. Like I've stated earlier, it puts us in a direct pathway, like with the police, which can become a really big problem. So I think it's a terrible thing.
Yeah, I agree. This is something that directly impacts youth, and not having a say in it just strips our power away, even though we don't have that much already. So it doesn't really make sense. Just because from what I know, youth hasn't done that many things where this is actually needed. And some people could say that it's like a preventative measure, but it's not the right measure that should be taken.
I fully agree. Even as somebody who primarily just goes from home and school and isn't out late at night, it definitely contributes to a feeling of observation and danger just going about daily life, regardless of the fact that I'm technically doing what I should be doing. History has shown us time and time again that no matter what we do as individuals, it doesn't matter if the system that we're operating in isn't going to recognize that.
I also agree with everyone said, because I feel like if adults don't experience the things that we experience, how can you speak for us? How can you vote for something that doesn't specifically affect you if you don't have that type of experience, or it's not necessarily something that you have to deal with? You can't speak for us. That's why we are trying to speak for ourselves.
If you could pass a bill or law right now, what would it be? Alternatively, what can DC Council do to help you fulfill your goals?
I think what I would do is having, I know that Black Swan Academy is currently working on something that would have youth convene bi-weekly to vote on legislation that's being shown and being made up by DC government. So I think that's something that I would definitely do, just having youth have a voice in the things that directly affect them.
I feel like introducing the Youth Advisory Council is the perfect way to always incorporate youth voices. I feel like if they work with the council members, I feel like it helps the council members get a better understanding of what is going on with the youth, and it also gives you decision-making power.
I wanted to ask if you guys believe that the way that the youth portrays themselves in public affects the stigmas that the media as well as the government puts on us, and if you do believe that it affects how we are perceived, what do you think are some ways that we can better change our perception while we go about our daily lives?
I I feel like when it comes to specific things like that, it's like when something is on the news, for example, we don't necessarily get to choose what's put on the news. I feel like when it comes to youth in general, it's always a negative stereotype or a negative title put on us. So I feel like it's there, the good things are there. It's not always negative. It's not about the way that we necessarily portray ourselves. It's about the way that the government, the news, and adults portray us when, they show things like that. I feel like the news and, people on Instagram, just multiple different ways, they can show the positive side of youth link-ups and also what we need.
I fully agree. Even no matter how much we as youth try to regulate ourselves, be mindful of our behavior, it's not possible for us to fully overcome these stereotypes that are so ingrained in the way that youth are talked about in the public narrative.
Tyler also mentioned earlier about getting down to the root of the cause. If we want to talk about the actions that our peers have that lead people to portray us this way, I think we also need to talk about what's causing youth to act that way. There's many things that can be wrong, mental health issues, housing problems, and so with that is why we need more mental health resources. We need more affordable housing. We just need to be more supported so that we can prevent these things. And that is also why we want the Youth Advisory Board, so that youth can have a say in how they are given a consequence.
I actually have a few questions. There are youth advisory councils that already exist under the mayor's purview. I'm curious to know if anyone of Black Swan, if you all actually sit on any of those boards, or have you explored those avenues?
So, just like me and my friend Trey over there, and all of my other friends in Black Swan, we have been working on the Youth Advisory Council. I'm not sure if anyone has been on any of the already existing boards, but we have, looked through some of them, and basically our Youth Advisory Council is slightly based off of how it already was before, going back to the idea of not wanting to necessarily ask too much. There was other Youth Advisory Councils, for example, there was one on climate change, I think, but the issue was that we want youth to talk about whatever they want to talk about, and we want youth to be incorporated into everything that is put on the youth. So there are, other ones, but they aren't specifically fitting for our needs. I feel like a way of saying, oh, hey, you can talk about climate change, which is something that we can't specifically control, especially just DC. I feel like it's a way to make it seem like youth are advocating when in reality they are really not. That's why I feel like our Youth Advisory Council is to speak up about whatever you want to speak up about, and also to talk about real things that are actually being introduced right now.
Thank you. The follow-up question is, with that Youth Advisory Council, what does the structure look like? Where would you all sit in the current structure of the district?
Can you rephrase that question, please?
Yes, I can. So earlier I heard you say that you want to talk about legislation, you want to be able to vote on youth curfew and things like that. Where would the council sit in the current structure? So you have DC Council. Would it be aside and working with the current DC Council? Where would you live?
So basically, the Youth Advisory Council will be working with the council members. We're still working specifically on when they will meet, how often they will meet, but I do know that they will be working with the council members, and I feel like that's very important because the council members are the people who make the decisions. And for example, just like the youth curfew, before it gets too far, they can stop it, they can share exactly how they feel on it, and they can also introduce new ideas. So yes, they will work with the council.
Hey y'all, so I'm really proud of all of the youth that were here today, but as we know, there are hundreds of thousands of youth in the city. So my question is, how do we get the youth that are not here, that are not involved in programs to come out? And what kind of fun things, outside of like a late night hype, what are some fun things that we can do to get other youth that are not involved in organizations to come out and participate? And like, what would y'all want to see outside of a late night hype? What kind of activities do you think would get the ones that are like, nah, that's lame, I'm not going to that. Those ones, how do we get those ones to get involved, and like what activities would they want to see?
I would say maybe like field trip type things, like where we can like maybe go out of town or go to an amusement park, stuff like that, where we can be surrounded with each other and build a sense of community, but also have fun at the same time.
I think this issue has been touched on, like youth don't necessarily have enough internships or ways to get money outside of SYP. So I feel like stipends are, a big part. I feel like if youth get small stipends, then they are more likely to go to certain things, also along with field trips and fun activities.
Good evening. My name is Kimry Hughes, and I don't have so much as a question, but I have some observations, right? I've been doing this work 46 years. I was in your seat as the youth mayor of DC in 1980. I've worked with the Mayor's Youth Leadership Institute, now Barry Youth Leadership Institute, on and off for 46 years. The idea of elevating your voices in young people's spaces and important places at the political table has always been a discussion. And I appreciate when you said young people are afterthought. I want to suggest to you that you check out the legislation that was created. And I think it was created under Chairman Gray, particularly for the Youth Council. There literally is a Youth Advisory Council. Legislation is there. So I want to encourage you, one, to research the legislation, but two, contact the council office and see what can be done to bring that back alive. There was an active staff member and everything. That is an important piece because it gives you access to government resources and it gives you access to information. And then create the kind of coalition that is involved. One way young people are active in government and helping to advise council is through the YMCA's Youth in Government Annual Legislative Summit. Legislation, so I just want to encourage you all to take them over, right? Build the numbers, train your folks, and take them over. And I'm not just an ally, I'm an advocate, so I'm here as an adult at 64 ready to fight for you.
Oh, I would just like to say that me and Taylor did attend the Youth and Government event. I do like the idea of it, and I feel like it's very educational, but it's more so like, I wouldn't say like a play type of thing, but it's more so just like something to necessarily temporarily do.
I'm just gonna make a note as the
I do want to share with you, you all ride the Metro free, and that became through the YMCA when the delegation submitted that legislation, and it became actual law. So it is possible.
So we appreciate that, and we appreciate your support. The bill that the young people are working on actually is based off of the Youth Advisory Council that was funded under Mayor Gray that hasn't been funded in over a decade. And so they're trying to revive it.
Thank you so much for the insight, though.
We have
Appreciate it.
time for just a few more questions, and then we want to get y'all, make sure you're out on time.
Thanks so much for all of your thoughts. It's really interesting and inspiring, and I'm taking a lot of mental notes about next steps. This is a really consequential election year, and while you may not be 18 and ready to vote, I'm sure you're paying attention to the election. So I'm curious if you have been involved in any of the campaigns, or if you have observations or comments about the campaign, specifically Campaign for Mayor.
Have y'all been watching anything about the mayoral campaign?
So yes. I haven't specifically did any campaigning myself, but I am in high favor of Janice Lewis George. I feel like she's a great advocate for the youth, and she represents the right things that DC needs.
Okay. Just administrative note, the young people are giving their individual opinions, and the organization does not endorse any particular candidates at all, pro or against. But the young people we want to make sure that they can give their truthful, honest opinions. So these are individual opinions, not the official positions of any of the organizations represented.
I wanted to take back to when y'all said how to get people involved with the field trip and stuff. I want to know, like, what would be the field trip exactly, and how would be getting people involved in it?
I guess it would just be based on what young people would like to do. Like I previously said, like amusement parks, because I know that's something that most people like to do. And we would just get the word out, doing like posters, social media posts, telling our peers and stuff.
Anybody else? Did you have your hand up?
Earlier you said what you need from the adults in the room was support. Can you unpack that? Can you share more? What does support actually look like?
Support to me looks like investing in us. Also, Tyler and myself both mentioned like internships. Young people are interested in many things, and it would be great if we can get some internships, especially if they're paid, because that would definitely be an interest to young people.
Thank you.
Hey y'all, I have so many questions, but I'm just gonna like pile it down to one. I'm curious, kind of building off of that, as we are looking into the summer and knowing that this curfew is continuing to be an issue for young people, what are some ways that adults can actually step up and support you and keep you safe during this time as we're coming into summer? And yeah, that can look in whatever way you define safe. And obviously pushing back against the DC Council on the youth curfew, obviously, but beyond that, what are some things that adults can do to support you guys?
I think on an individual scale, if you're trying to look out for the young people in your own life, it's very important that you are truly listening to them to get a better understanding of how you can support them as an individual, be it directing them towards other programs, be it keeping tabs on like what it is that they are actually involved in, just to make sure that you are best supporting your individual youth in a way that will actually be beneficial rather than too harmful or controlling towards them.
To expand on that, specifically when we're talking about like your young people in your household, make sure that they are aware of their rights. When you're encountering police, a lot of things can go wrong, and we know our skin color, we know we are already under attack. And so it is very important that we remember to stay calm and to know our rights.
Okay, we might have time for one last question.
Hi, everyone. I have a question around mental health access. So I work in the youth homelessness space, and so when we speak to young people in that space, they say we want mental health services to come to where we physically are. Like, we don't want to have to find them in the community. And so we launched a campaign to try to do that, but the council said, even if it's a good idea, even if we gave you all the monies to do that, there's no one to fill those roles, so they didn't do it. Like, there's a mental health shortage, or mental health workers are not wanting to work in youth serving fields. So like, do you have any suggestions or ideas on how we strengthen the youth mental health workforce so that we can bring the services to young people where they are?
Firstly, I would like to say I think support starts in the household. I think that I think that parents need to support their kids more and listen to their kids when they say they are going through things. A lot of people have lost their lives tragically, and in order to prevent that, I think that there needs to be a lot more household care. I also think that there may be a lot of negative stereotypes when it comes to youth, which kind of puts people off on working with them, and I think that hopefully if we can kind of get rid of these negative stigmas and put some more positive vibes into the air, then hopefully people will want to work with the youth more.
I just want to say one thing, especially because I have a personal experience with someone on the council. Just because the government says it does not mean it's true. A lot of the time, it can be a cover-up, or it could be something that's slightly true, but it's not all the way true. Like, for an example, they could say, oh, we have a shortage, but of course it's a shortage because, certain counselors don't get paid enough and things like that. So it's like a lot of times they try to sugarcoat the truth, and they don't have to exactly lie to do it.
I wanted to say that I fully agree that support begins in the household. Obviously, the shortage of mental health workers is not something that's going to be solved overnight. But from my own experience, when adults themselves have the knowledge of where they can take their children to get resources, even if that means going outside of the DMV, it can make a very big and very positive impact on outcomes.
Thank you all so much. Help me give a round of applause to our awesome panel. And we're so glad that you all are interested in taking action. A lot of the adult questions were around action. So we're going to ask you to spend 5 minutes in, we have 4 corners, not exactly corners, but you'll see halfway up the room and in the back, there are 4 signs on the walls based on the kinds of actions you might be interested in taking. And I'm gonna let Irene introduce the activity.
All right. So thank you again to our wonderful panel. Again, I'm the policy manager, Miss Irene, and I've been a part of this work as a youth advocate and adult ally since the very beginning of Black Swan Academy. I've seen firsthand how important it is for youth voices to be heard, not just listened to, but acted on, as our youth have said. So you have directly heard what our youth are experiencing and what they're asking for. These are real challenges, but they also come with very clear solutions. Now we want to shift from listening to action right here in this space. So we're going to do an interactive activity called Commitment Corners. And so this is a chance for you to think about how you can take action based on what you've heard today. Around the room, there are, again, somewhat corners or 4 sections, and we're going to break out into groups, each representing a different way to take action. So we first have the advocate section, and the advocate section is being run by Ms. Kristen. And so that's going to be the corner where you all are going to be envisioning how to support policy and systemic change. Then we have the invest corner that is going to be facilitated by Ms. Valentine in the back. That's where you will be discussing how we can provide funding, resources, or opportunities. Then we have partner that is run by Mr. Germain in that corner. You all will be discussing how to collaborate with organizations and directly with youth. And last but not least, Ms. Samari will be going over youth voices and stories in the Amplify corner. So what we're gonna do right now is we're gonna dismiss for a couple of minutes into these small groups. You will get an index card, and first you all are gonna have a group discussion about steps that are needed in the next 30 days, in the next 90 days. What are we immediately going to do? How are we mobilizing? And on your individual index card, you're gonna take a moment and write your own personal accountability action, okay? So that's the activity that we're gonna do for the next couple of minutes. So again, we have partner, advocate, amplify, and invest. We'll come back in a few moments. Patrick, can we have a little bit of some tunes? All right, so again, we're breaking out into these groups. This is about putting our efforts into action. So we have amplify, advocate, partner, invest. They're around. Youth leaders, you support whichever poster you're closest to. Nobody wants to help us amplify? It's an empty corner. Thank you. You do. You come every year. I always hear your name, sir. What is
Kimmy.
Nice to see you again. Thank you for always supporting us. All right.
I'm good. I got
Okay,
one.
all right, okay.
But do I have to write?
Yes, because it's going to be your accountability card. It's going to be your exit ticket. We won't let you out the door until you turn in what you're doing in the next 30 days.
But I will write on the board?
You can write on your card. Thank you. So again, you're gonna write your name and your personal accountability action on your index card. That is your exit ticket. You cannot exit until you turn that in. Youth leaders, you're supporting the groups that are near where you're sitting.